Hey, welcome to God's Glory and Men's Real Stories. So glad you guys could join me on another episode of Men's Conversations and Stories. I want to thank all my new listeners. This community continues to grow, and it's just truly a blessing because I know that there are so many people just receiving the blessing that we're putting out here. And so I hope that you can truly feel welcomed here, not only my new listeners, but also my return listeners. I thank you all for coming back just to join us on another journey and conversation with another great story that I have prepared. So on today's episode, of course, as always, I hope that you can sit back, get comfortable, not only feel God's love here, but also see God's glory in men's real stories. So as I said before, I got another special guest. As always, I got a guest that's truly coming on to gift you guys with his vulnerability, with his story, with conversation, and just different things that truly will help you kind of pioneer life. Because I've totally understood that it takes a community. And that doesn't just stop when we're kids. It continues to move forward as we're an adults. So my guest today is a gentleman that I met. Actually, I have a story for every person that I actually kind of sit down with, because it's so crazy how God leads me sometimes even into people's comments to allow me to bump into people that he's already prepared and opened the door for, to say, hey, look, I want you to reach out to this brother right here. And I'm like, yeah, but I'm in somebody else's comments. But like, yeah, okay, God, I'm not one to disobey. So let me shoot him a message and see where it goes. And of course, a lot of times there's a level of like, what if he says no? And I know we all kind of experience that fear sometimes of like rejection, or what if that person's not interested? But it's not about how I feel or what I thought. It was more so saying, you know what, if you've led me here, then you've probably already worked this out. And I was gracious to have this brother say, it would be my pleasure to come and join you. So without further ado, I want to welcome my brother, not a Charlotte native, but now living in Charlotte, good brother Jordan Rawls.
What's going on?
How you doing, man? How you doing?
I'm doing fantastic, my brother.
Awesome. I'm so glad you could sit down with me today. So how's your holidays gone for you?
It was smooth. I kind of kicked it locally with my wife. Just kind of kept it low key. Cooked the lasagna. It was absolutely delicious.
Nice. And so you're a cook, is what I'm hearing.
I love to cook.
Okay, yeah, nice. All right. You know what? And it's funny how there's so many men sometimes that are like, it's a toss up. Myself personally, I can cook things. I am a breakfast guy. Mm-hmm. I am a dessert guy.
Okay.
Me and my son, we like to tinker around, and he's more of the chef than I am. But I enjoy. I remember my first meal that I ever made. You said lasagna. I never forget the first meal I ever made for somebody. I tried to fake the funk and pretend like I made a lasagna when really it was a frozen dinner.
Yeah.
And it was still frozen in the center when I put it on the plate. Right?
Oh, man.
Yeah. So that just made me think about that. But but that's awesome, man.
Yeah.
Well, let me have you go ahead and tell my listeners a little bit about yourself.
For sure, man. So my name is Jordan Rawls. I go by Coach Rawls. I am from humble beginnings in Rochester, New York, where it's really cold up there. I was talking to Justin about it. I come from Rochester, New York, stayed there most of my life, and I moved down here to Charlotte about 3 years ago. Okay. And, a little bit about myself. People would say that I was the rose that grew from the concrete, I absolutely love growing. I love leveling up and reaching more aligned versions of myself, an aligned version that God has for me. I really enjoy that, and I also help empowering, and helping others do the same, especially first generation professionals and entrepreneurs.
Right.
So what I do these days is full time. I'm an agile coach, or what others know as a scrum master, and part time I am a mindset coach for first generation professionals and entrepreneurs, helping them grow into where they want to go by prioritizing their wealth and well-being first thing in the morning.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. So tell me more about that. What does that look like? How did that get started?
So how I do that is I do it with my wife. Me and my wife, we have a lifestyle and coaching brand called Wellth and Relaxed. And we just started it this year. But 2 years ago, in the beginning of the pandemic, I realized how miserable I was with my life, miserable with my job, miserable with not living to my fullest potential. So I'm a first generation professional, and that means I was the first in my immediate family to graduate college. But before I got there, I come from, like I said, humble beginnings where there's a lot of generational cycles needed to be broken in the family that I'm from. Very distant family, mental health issues, poverty, violence, all around my city. And honestly, growing up, I had a decent childhood, but as soon as I reached my early teens, that's when my eyes began to open to all of the negativity that was happening around me. My parents divorced, and my father moved out the home. And that kind of, put me in a position where I wasn't necessarily learning what it meant to become a young man and learn about myself. So I relied a lot on what I can gain from my external environment. And and kind of seeing my mom going through some mental health issues and seeing other family members going through that, it motivated me to want to see better for myself, better for my family. So in the early parts of my teenage years, though I was, looking around at others, following others, doing things that might not have been the best for me, right, at the same time, I was a high achiever. I had this drive in me. I had this motivation to change my circumstances. So at very early age of 14, I started working corporate jobs. So I started learning what art was, learning what IT was, learning what architecture was, engineering. Every single year of every summer, from starting from 14 all the way up to 20 something, I had a different kind of internship, trying to learn the corporate environment, learn new skills, figure out what I'm good at. But the entire time I didn't really know who I was, but I was learning what it meant to be this corporate persona or this version of myself. Right. So that kind of, fast forward, I'm knee deep into my career, and I'm realizing I don't know who I am. I'm not doing anything purposeful for my community. I'm still running around with all these different women. I'm not managing my money effectively. Dealing with imposter syndrome, survivor's guilt. I'm just dealing with so much, and my mindset is so warped, and I'm seeing the world in not in a not so positive way because I got the money. I moved out from home. I got everything that I thought I needed, but I still felt like I wasn't being the best version of myself. I wasn't doing anything meaningful. So that then led on to me years later getting my life together, mind, body, soul, relationship, finances, and starting Wealthy and Relaxed to help others who come from humble beginnings like myself, to help them realize the power in their story and become who God created them to be.
No, that's awesome, dude. As I sit here and I listen, I'm thinking to myself, wow, there's so many of us. I was talking to somebody about how important it was to have mentors. And sometimes we don't have those people around us to truly be able to guide us in the right place. And even though they may be older, it doesn't make them the best choice to kind of guide us. And so you're actually saying that you have actually a set up to where, or a community where you actually can help people, not only men, but women as well, to kind of like put them into a place where they could better understand not only who they're called to be, but more importantly, who they are outside of what they are, what they've done.
Yeah, what they've signed up for.
Yeah.
And a lot of us become a victim of our own success.
Right.
And we don't know how to get out, and we don't feel empowered enough to find our way out.
Right.
And that's what I was able to do during the pandemic is, really work on myself via a morning routine, waking up in the morning, meditating, exercising, doing affirmations, journaling, getting a therapy, getting a coach, a myriad of different things, checking my net worth on a monthly basis.
Right.
And, obviously reading the Bible, and that combination of doing that a few hours before work every single morning helped elevate, my own perception of myself and what I can do with God and what I can do in this world. And from there, things have skyrocketed in terms of, the brand and where I believe God has me going.
Right. That's awesome. And I love how you just dropped. I hope people got a chance to write down those tools, because those tools are so important.
Yeah.
And sometimes a lot of people think, well, it doesn't take all that, or it's not, I don't need to what's meditation? And a lot of people don't seek out what could truly change a lot of things just starting with first thing in the morning, because so many of us have such a bad morning routine. A lot of us roll over and we pull the phone out and we already immediately get started on a level of like, you know what? I'm not doing that.
Right.
Or I'm not there. Or why haven't I taken a vacation? And so we immediately start to beat ourselves up without realizing it, just with a poor morning routine. So I noticed how you talked about, trying to truly get to know who you are.
Yeah.
And a lot of times when a person came and they were introduced to you, what was your way of introducing yourself to people? Like, how did you introduce yourself? Because I know how a lot of us, we'll step into it and it's always about what we do for a living. Am I correct about that?
Oh, for sure. That's a fact. I mean, that's all I've been trained to do since I was an early teen. When you're coming up in the hood and all you see is negativity, you're trying your best to reach for an opportunity. You're taking all opportunities. Right. If you have enough drive in you, you have that ambition, you're taking any opportunity. And you're not getting that time to really understand yourself. You're learning these skills on how to build a resume, how to, dress to the for the job that you're about to get. You're so used to being a chameleon. Any environment you go into, you're used to trying to please whoever it is has this opportunity for you. So, after so many years of that, I realized I wasn't spending enough time on figuring out who I was. So as I'm doing these things and I'm succeeding in it, I was the hometown hero. I mean, I was valedictorian of my high school. I was honor roll all throughout high school. All the accolades you can say. Even in college, I did it all. I was in leadership, vice president, president. I did it all. But at the end of the day, I was still gaining so much. I thought I had so much value and confidence in myself based on the titles that were assigned to me and the awards I've gotten and the people that got to know me through those organizations and through those jobs. So I was definitely introducing myself as what I've gained and not what I've learned and derived from what God put in me and what I've nurtured from being who I was called to be,
Right. So normally, I can say, I love how I sit across from men, and this is truly organic. So normally, a lot of people think, well, we've rehearsed this, we've talked about this. This is my first time actually really listening to your story, and it's funny how a lot of men, I tell people all the time, it creates the Me Too movement, because you're just sitting there, you're like, yeah. I couldn't have said it any better, but I love how you talked about how, playing so many different roles for so many different people, whether it be at the job, whether it be at the particular organization you join, whether it be at the country club you may have decided you wanted to be a part of so that you can feel like you're wanted there, you're wanted here, and how we play so many different roles. We put on so many different masks based on where we're going. What would you say happened at a certain point where, because I can say personally myself, I had a humbling moment where almost everything was basically stripped away from me. And what wasn't stripped away from me, I had to shake off. So I could truly know who I was outside of everything I had done and played and then the accolades I had picked up. What was it for you that just kind of like, because I know you said it was during the pandemic, and I know so much has happened for people during the pandemic, good and bad. There's some people that made a lot of money, but there's some people who had to sit with themselves.
For sure.
They had to sit with their families. So what about yourself?
Yeah, so even leading up to the pandemic, I was suffering on the inside. I was living out of New Hampshire for 5 years at that time because I was so hyped to get into college, which I got into college on a full scholarship because there was no way I would be able to do that. But I got in, I studied IT because they said it was lucrative at the time and that was going to get me paid. That was literally the only reason why I ended up in IT. So I wasn't passionate about what I was doing, but I did it because I knew it would give me a good paycheck and change my circumstances fast as possible without going the drug route, the street route, right?
Right. No doubt.
So I did that. 2 weeks later, after graduating, moved out to New Hampshire. that was my first car, first time really driving like that. I took all my stuff and just went, no one else went with me. And being out there, it is, there's not many men of color out there. There's not really people of color out there. So I had a very small circle, and we supported each other as much as we can. But most of the time, I was in a foreign environment. Most of the time, in the company that I was in, working in tech, I didn't feel like I was enough. I didn't feel like I was smart enough or brought to the table what everyone else around me was bringing around. And I didn't want to work hard enough and stress myself out enough to try to reach their level necessarily, because it wasn't what I cared about anyway.
Right.
So
you were there for the paycheck.
I was there for the paycheck. So, thankfully I was still able to rise the ranks. I kept my head down and do what many parents teach you from the working class, just keep your head down, grind it out, and, you'll be blessed, you'll get that promotion. And then, it worked for a little bit, but then I hit a plateau. I realized that I couldn't reach the next level because of something, and I didn't know what it was. And, so I started getting these migraines because, how I'm looking right at you right now. I would be like this on a Zoom call or at work, but you couldn't tell that I was anxious on the inside. You couldn't tell how tense my body was because of how uncomfortable I felt on the inside. But I knew what to do to show up and be who I needed to be, to get this paycheck, to get these promotions. I was neglecting myself the entire time. So it reached a point where I was getting migraines very frequently, maybe 2 or 3 per week for about 2 or 3 years. And, around 2018, I said, I've had enough. I gotta first move to Charlotte so I can get a peace of mind, because everyone in that New Hampshire area, everybody worked at the company I worked at. So everyone, even if I left work, it was about work. I was who I was, my job title. I was that all the time.
You couldn't ever turn off. It was like I had to play this role all the time.
Exactly. And I took pride in it too, because it's like they're giving me good pay. This is the most elevated that I've ever felt. I made it, that mentality. But at the end of the day, I was suppressing a lot of my own needs. I was suppressing a lot of, that need to feel a sense of belonging in the workplace. I didn't really know much about myself. I had a ton of unresolved traumas from back home that I was carrying with me that I just hadn't addressed. So, it just got to a point where I got down here shortly after 2018, and it was good, but I'm still working for this job, and I'm still spending 40 hours per week doing something that I don't like. So I was going to my wife all the time complaining, and just, I got to do something different. Pandemic came, it was honestly, that was the best thing that I got out of the pandemic, is the time that I got to spend figuring myself out, figuring out what it is I do want to do, who it is do I want to become. Why haven't I became that person yet? Why am I so stressed out about not being able to fit into certain crowds? Or why haven't I been able to consider what is a different job that may be actually better for me? Why have, just taking that time to really dig deep inside. Right. And, over time, I formulated my own morning routine just to do that. So when I did that work, I popped up at work, and I was such a light to people. I just felt more empowered. I felt more confident, because I was taking the time to prioritize myself before I learned to do all my entire life, which is prioritizing everyone else in their endeavors.
Yeah. And it's crazy because you said you grew up with a single mother, right?
Yes.
And so you watched her prioritize everybody else before she ever prioritized. I'm sure she was probably the one who made your plate, and she stood up, and you wanted to, and we back then as kids, we didn't know to say, hey, Mom, why don't you sit down? Why don't you make you a plate? Matter of fact, let me make you a plate. You sit down. So we move into what we've always seen mirrored. And we do that a lot of times, not realizing I'm becoming her, which is not a bad thing, but there are a lot of things that she didn't do for herself. And it's got to stop. Like you said, generational trauma. It's got to stop at a certain point to realize I got to pour back into myself
for sure,
just as much.
And
you even talked about how, at a certain point, there was no disconnect from work. And so I tell people the scariest thing ever is when you put a mask on and you forget to take it off.
Yeah.
And you keep playing that character, and,
Right.
and the body keeps the score. So your body starts to tell you, like, hey, listen, you know, these migraines are coming from the fact that you're still playing a character that you don't have any business playing. It's not you in the first place.
Right.
But you decided to take it home now.
Right.
And so, I can definitely connect to what you're saying there, because it's like, it's tough when you keep playing that over and over. So with those morning routines, tell me which ones would you say are probably the most important to you, if you were to have to choose one out of all of them to say, okay, if you don't do nothing else, this is one that you should really focus on?
Well, when you say one, I think I'm more of a holistic guy.
Okay.
Me and my wife, we're mind, body, soul, relationship, finances. Like that's,
it's not a separation. You gotta, right,
you know, because most of our life, you know, when you're a first generation professional, I mean, you got that drive, you got that ambition, and you're going places, but you come from an environment where your mindset is stuck in survival mode. Like all you know is to avoid pain and chase pleasure, and you don't know purpose, right? So, you know, so you go to chasing money. You know, you chase a lot of what impacts us in our life is comes from money. I mean, we think if we get the money,
right,
that'll be the end all be all.
Right.
And I focus so much of my life on chasing the money and realizing, okay, I got the money, but there's this huge gap inside. There's all this pain inside. So we have to learn how to balance the mind, body, soul, relationship, and finances at the same time. And that just means getting up a couple of hours before you got to clock in, starting with prayer first thing in the morning. Have some gratitude, have some prayer, you know, give it all to God, ask him to give you the strength, and you know, take some time to meditate. You know, take that time to stop worrying so much about the past and stop, you know, well, actually, not being so worried about the past and fearful about the future. You know, learning how to be here, right, and now, so that your mind is not constantly overthinking all the time, taxing yourself. You know, go ahead.
So do this. Explain meditation, because I know at one time people used to be like, I don't know about this meditation thing. It sounds a little crazy. And it wasn't until I really tapped into it till I realized, whoa, why have I not done this? Yeah. So break down meditation for people who aren't familiar with meditation.
Well, meditation to me is taking the time to be with yourself and be with your own thoughts, right? We can't control when thoughts come. Thoughts are always coming, all the time. And before, people don't realize that before they take an action or before they behave, it starts with a thought. You get a thought, then you have an emotion, and then you take an action. So a lot of us are operating out of these thoughts that we haven't learned how to take more control over, right? So, you know, when you come from a background, when you come from the hood, when you come from you come from these environments and you undergo all these circumstances that all you see is negativity, and you don't effectively balance the positives and you see the opportunities in things. You're always blaming and focus on the negative,
right?
It'll have you behaving and acting and taking on a persona that doesn't allow you to be as prosperous in life. So we have to be able to take time to just sit with yourself, put your phone away, put away all the distractions, and just be with yourself. Right. And focus on something that either you can see, something you can hear, something that you can feel, or something, you know, usually they say the breath, right? Because it's the only thing that happens automatically. Right. It'll always be there. If you focus on your breath and you do that long enough, your brain, there's a muscle in our brain, and I don't know the name of the muscle, but it gets stronger over time. You get better at concentrating. You get better at focusing. Right. So the more that I meditate, about 15 minutes a day, it compounds over time, and you'll realize that you're going to be getting these thoughts that we can't stop. They're going to be negative. They're going to be positive. But instead of you just reacting all the time, all the negative thoughts, meditation is building up that muscle to give you the space and time to effectively respond to those thoughts. So if you get a negative thought, you know, you got an interview coming up and you're thinking, I'm not enough, I'm not good enough for this, I'm not good enough for the job. Because you've been meditating, you're able to take that thought and say, I'm not good enough and this and that. No, forget all of that. I know what God thinks about me. I know all that I've done. I know how far that I've come. And you can switch that with a positive thought and change your emotions in that instant, which impacts your behaviors.
Right, which almost leads into affirmations of what you were just talking about.
Exactly.
Just reassuring yourself.
Exactly. Reassure yourself of when it comes to affirmations, for me, it's like, think about where you want to go. Okay, we all got goals and we want to go somewhere. But think about who you need to become to get there, right? Mm-hmm. A lot of us think about the results all the time, getting to the result, and we get stressed out and we quit and we don't follow through on our goals because we think too much about what could come in the future instead of realizing who we need to be right now and what we need and how to enjoy the experience right now.
Right.
In order for you to effectively brave the journey. So affirmations helps us not necessarily think about that result, but think about who we need to be right now. If you want to get that job that you don't know when it's going to come, you don't know when God is going to bless you with that promotion, you focus on what God is telling you about yourself now, that you are great, you are valuable, you are powerful, and that if you continue to reassure yourself about who you are now, you'll be more settled and okay with who you are now. You'll be okay with how life is going. You'll be okay with everything you already have, everything God has already given you. Right. And you just got to keep yourself reminded, and that'll help you continue to show up as you need to be to get and achieve that goal that you like to then achieve.
Right. Hey, look, that's why he's the coach, man. Because look, this is all good stuff, and a lot of people like we just discussed. A lot of people don't have a morning routine. As a matter of fact, we're just barely waking up. We're hitting the snooze button, and by the time we've hit it about 5 times, we're running into clothes, we're running into work, and we just completely forgot about ourselves. Right. We're pouring into somebody else, and we've never stopped and thought about pouring into back into the person who has to do everything for somebody else.
Yeah, we don't think enough about how better the world would be, how better our jobs would be, how better our spouses would be, how better our friends would be if we learned how to take the time to ourselves to better ourselves so that we can be in our most performant version of ourselves. Like, you'll be able to pour more into people when you pour into yourself. But for some reason, we think that just pouring out our cup everywhere is going to allow us to still show up best for the people that we think we need to show up for. Right. So,
and it probably creates a lot more resentment for the people we want to pour back into us, but don't know what we need or when we need it. Because a lot of times, think about it, we'll pour ourselves so thin that we're looking at the people like our significant others, our girlfriends, our wives, whoever that's around us, our friends, to say, hey, look, bro, I need, where you at? And sometimes the way they pour back into us is not always the most healthy way. It's like I could hit you up and say, let's go to the bar, man. Let's go grab a drink.
Yeah.
And you're thinking, well, yeah, that'll just give me some time just to relax. But a lot of times we don't think about how going to a bar and getting a drink sometimes incites all the thoughts and everything that we're carrying. And it creates a space where we just explode sometimes on everybody around us because that maybe the drink just opens up that door for you to say, look, I know you felt some type of way. You've been carrying this resentment.
Right.
Now it's time to just unload. Maybe it start with your friend. Maybe it'll follow you home. But a lot of times we don't think about how important it is just to take some time out, like you said, to pour back into yourself, whether it be with meditation, affirmations, Prayer is a huge one. Yeah. Exercise is one that a lot of men run to, but sometimes they bury themselves in it and they go overboard and not really pour into other areas. I mean, exercise is great.
Because you focus a lot on how you look but essentially I use confidence as a tool I use exercise as a tool for confidence. It helps me put into action, putting myself through something that's painful, obviously. And once you get through it, you're more confident in yourself because you pushed yourself. So it's more practical, whereas a lot of the other work is a lot of mental, a lot of, internal work, right?
So that's a good point. Yeah. No, that's a good point. So as a first generation, individual who's stepping out here, what type of pressure is carried on your back,
knowing,
because I just it's like, oh man, you saw how heavy this seems. But what is it like to carry that pressure as a first generation?
It's a heavy burden, man, because I mean, for one, your folks are still going through so much back home, and you're not necessarily there with them. You know, you're out and you're building yourself, you're growing yourself, and you're taking every opportunity that you hope that you hope one day will be able to pour back into your family, but it's just you can't be there every single second right then and there, right? That's my story, and so they're going through all of that. So because of that distance, because of I'm living a completely different life now, it disrupts our relationship, you know. Right. They no longer reach out like they used to, and I may not be able to reach out as much as I used to. I may not relate to the same things that we used to do, the ways that we used to have fun. Right. It's even tough to relate. So, and then you got all the pressures of simply just being the only one out there and not having the blueprint necessarily. No one showed you necessarily how to get out and get it, how to pour into yourself, how to navigate these corporate environments, right? So there's a lot of weight. There's survivor's guilt. There's imposter syndrome, not feeling good enough. There's, not necessarily having identity issues, not knowing who you are, not knowing what real manhood is. So you pick it up all from the world, right? There's so many angles you can go from there. But that's what gives me so much passion, and that's why I want to help others realize the power in their stories, because after of all that weight that we're carrying, it gets us so easy to look at ourselves and others who come from similar backgrounds from a deficit perspective. Like you think about all the deficiencies, like, oh, they're first generation, their parents never went to college, they don't have a certain amount of money, they don't, they may not know enough about themselves, they didn't grow up with their father in the house, and you get so used to labeling yourself based on that, but you don't think about the fact that you've persevered through all of it, the fact that you're so resilient, that you have this drive, and that you're an excellent strategic thinker, and the tenacity you have because you've made it through all of that. Life has given you such potent gifts. God has given you such potent experiences that helped you build up such skills that allow you to be such a great value to the world or any space that you go into. So that's why I want to help us see ourselves from more of an asset perspective and help others see us from an asset perspective.
I like the way you put that. That's good. And see yourself as an asset. That's really cool. I like that. I like the way you put that. So, and it's funny, you even said something about the labels we put on ourselves. And sometimes those labels will hold us to a spot of, yeah, but I can't do this, man, because I come from poverty. Yeah. And that label of poverty is right here. And I'll slap another label, and like we'll slap so many labels on ourselves that their labels will hold us back from who we're called to even be. And then more importantly, think about this one. And I'm sure you've probably dealt with different people while coaching that will say, yeah, but every time I feel like I'm stepping ahead, I get a call from back home where they want to remind me of who I am. They want to remind me of the responsibilities, and I'm not holding down anymore. I haven't sent this to them. I haven't come to visit them. And so we're pulled back into a life that we're running from a lot of times instead of realizing that even if I go back there, I can still take this new person with me without feeling as though now you're just too good for us. And I'm sure you hear that a lot.
I heard it from my own father a couple years ago, and it was the most terrible thing I thought I had to hear from him. But, we've since rekindled our relationship. But, yeah, hearing that from your own father or someone who's near and dear to you that's a tough thing to carry. You know? But then it also helped me look at myself, and really, really just think introspectively. Is there any potential truth to that? Do I think that I'm better than my folks back home? Am I not able to relate to them because they haven't necessarily, gotten to the spaces that I've gotten, but what about the way that I'm thinking about them? What about the things that I used to do that I no longer find fun, or the conversations that I used to have with them that I no longer entertain? It could be also me forgetting where I came from sometimes, because I think when we elevate our mindsets, when we get opportunities and we do see ourselves in a higher light, it's easy to look back at where you came from and the people who you came from, the people who you used to hang with, and see them for what they haven't done yet.
Right.
Versus, the great, admirable, amazing human beings that they already are and who they were when you were back there.
Right.
You know what I mean?
They played a role in a season of your life.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Right. So
no, that's real cool. Yeah, that's really good. That's really good. And I think that does kind of give us like a guilty feeling sometimes when we look back. I rode my son one time through my old neighborhood, and there were some guys that were still there. Mm-hmm. They were actually still sitting exactly where I remember them sitting. They were in the exact same house. And you always have this feeling of like, man, like I feel bad that like I can roll through here, but I can leave here. Right, I don't have to stay here. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times that does make you kind of, like you said, it's that imposter syndrome. Like, am I playing a role that's not really me? Yeah. And is that, and so I do find that important to recognize that. And I think that comes with the affirmations of reminding yourself who you are, but more importantly, tapping into who God sees you as and not who you've seen yourself as. Because when you realize who he sees you as, you can forgive yourself for who you had to play in survival. Yeah. And survival is something, man. When we realize, man, I've been doing that because I've just been trying to survive life. Yeah. Like and then I went to this to cope with that because I was and at the end of the day, I'm all for healthy coping. I'm all for healthy ways to continue to make it through life. But I think at the end of the day, everybody wants to live life and not survive life. Yeah. Not cope with things forever. I mean, coping is great. It's almost like a step program to say, okay, hey, look, I'm going to find a healthy way to cope instead of going to unhealthy ways. But at the end of the day, it's like almost like a crutch. And that, like, you don't want to use these crutches for life. You're just using them now as a coping to get through this. Like, once I get through this, I'm going to put these crutches down. I want to live life. I want to run again. I want to walk again without these. And so, no, that's a good point. That's a good point. So what is another tool that you feel is important for a lot of men or women that are listening to maybe add to their bag or their portfolio of what they feel they should tap into to continue to be a better version of themselves?
For sure. Well, I think one of the most important tools, in addition to having your own morning routine, because with a morning routine, it's a lot of internal work. It's a lot of work that you have to do on your own. Mm-hmm. But you also will need accountability. Accountability will be huge on that journey, and I give a lot of credit to my wife, Candace, who she was my accountability for the past few years. I mean, I've had a therapist, I've had a career coach in the past, but my wife has been my biggest accountability partner. She's the reason why I was even why I considered getting back reconnected with God. I grew up in the church, but so many years I've lived life without the Lord. After age of 14, I didn't come back to him until truly come back to him till I was around 28 years old. Yeah. Right. So a lot of years in between. And, because of her, being there to inspire me and empower me to tap in, with the Lord and being able to hold me accountable to the work that I am doing in private, because she's the person who I have to show up for every single day, for this family, for the brand, for our home, for work. And so she sees it, day in and day out, what have been the results of all this work that I've been doing. Right. I can't just go in my room and, like you said, come in your room and you can do whatever once the door is closed, right? You don't have to do anything. But, once you do that work, once you do that work behind closed doors, it helps you show up publicly and do amazingly. And I was showing up in my marriage amazing, Right. And so, I say that all to say, whether you're finding a partner, a man, a woman, or having a coach, on the journey, it's good to have someone there to hold you accountable to these goals, to this life, to this person who you said you want to become. Right. And checking in with them now and then and being able to have someone listen to you and ask you questions that no one has ever asked you. Right. Because sometimes the right question to have you shifting your perspective, which can shift your entire life.
So true. I mean, that is incredibly true, because we can only see things sometimes from a certain lens.
Yep.
And it takes a person to produce a question or thought that makes you say, you know what? And then literally that's happened twice to me just today.
Once you get that,
Yeah. right. It's just like, whoa, I didn't think about it that way. I was only looking at it from one way. And I love how you talked about the accountability partner, because we all need those. More importantly, God saw fit for us to have an accountability partner in life. He never meant for us to do life alone. Think about it. He gave man a woman. He gave us all partners, whether it be a spouse or whether it just be other brothers, whether it be other sisters that come around you to say, hey, look, you know what? We're going to walk together. I don't want you to take this journey anymore by yourself.
Yep.
I notice how this journey's probably wearing you down. And more importantly, you need people to encourage you sometimes.
Exactly.
You need people to hold you accountable for what you're not doing when they know you have what it takes to do it. It's I know you have that, even when you don't see it in yourself.
Yeah.
So sometimes you need that. Some people say, well, I need my theme music. Yeah, no, I need my community. I need my community. You can put the theme music on too, but the community is what really helps groom you into who God has created you to be, who they see you to be, and who you should see yourself to be eventually. So no, that's really good. That's so important. As a matter of fact, I think almost like that's one of the ones that you have to be accountable or acknowledge certain aspects of you before you can even really tap into who you are. Because without truly acknowledging that, like,
it's ownership.
Yeah.
Ownership is huge, man. You got to take ownership.
Right.
You know, I love to ask people, okay, what do you want to do? Okay. And why do you want it? Because that's important. And then who will you become on that journey? And why don't you have it? Like, why don't you have it? Because we need to think about what are the reasons that we've always been telling ourselves why we haven't achieved a certain thing or why we can't be great. Right. But at the end of the day, I believe no matter what reason you put out there, there's always a share of ownership that you can take, even if it's just the way you're perceiving the situation, the way you're perceiving this person, the way you're perceiving this thing that you're blaming. There's always a different way to see it, and a way that will empower you or to give you opportunity to gain much more and be able to get what you really truly want.
That's a good point.
You have to see yourself as powerful enough and empowered enough to take ownership and navigate your way around whatever that roadblock you think is in your way.
Right. No, that's so true. That's really good. So what do you plan on doing? What are, and I know everybody loves to make these New Year's resolutions as we go into 2023. I know everybody likes to plan and prepare and stuff like that. What are your plans as you go into 2023 to really do not only for you, but for your business and everything around you and your circumference?
Well, next year is going to be a big year. I'm currently looking for a new job. I'm looking to have a home built. I am looking to start my family eventually next year. So the most important thing for me is maintaining my routine. It's what I call a wealthy routine.
Right.
Because wealth is important, right? We need to break generational, curses and build generational wealth.
Right.
But we can't do that if we don't prioritize our well-being as well. So that's why I call it wealth, right? WELLTH. And I intend to maintain my routine and make sure I understand, what are my top goals for next year? Like I said, job, family life, love, business, just keeping all of those core areas of my life that I know are important to me intact. And that's by making sure I'm still getting up in the morning and taking some time to think about and focus on and build incrementally towards those things. And that'll help me continue to show up in my most aligned version of myself, my best version of myself for the world. So
no, that's awesome. And I love how y'all spent it to say wealth, because a lot of times when people think of that, they're just thinking of how much money you can accrue.
Exactly, just the money.
Right. They only think about it from that aspect, but they forget about the physical wealth. They forget about the mental wealth.
Yeah.
And I love how people always like mental health. Yeah, it's your wealth. It's your mental wealth. It's your physical wealth, because that stuff has such high value.
Exactly.
It's a value that money can't buy you. Money cannot buy you a new brain and the
Or
mind and
happiness.
thoughts and happiness. I try to tell people that. I just saw a meme the other day where somebody was like, yeah, why is it that Oprah Winfrey isn't stressed out at 67, I think it was. And they were like, well, because she has $1 billion. And I was like, I promise you, that $1 billion is not helping her run from the stress or the thoughts or the physical situations that are going as she gets older.
Yeah. Even Oprah has a routine.
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
Most successful people, and it's so underrated. Morning routines are so underrated, but most successful people have their own morning routine.
Right.
You have to. That's why I call it grow into where you want to go. If you have a morning routine, you're growing internally, you're growing externally, and you're going to where you want to go.
Right.
You're becoming this person who can brave this journey to get to wherever you need to get to, wherever you want to get to.
Right. No, that's so good. And that's so true, man. I truly hope that my listeners are like taking note and like I got to tap in because maybe I'm missing that morning routine. I don't have that. I haven't given myself that.
Yeah.
And a lot of times it's exactly that. I haven't given myself that. I give myself so many different things.
Yes.
I haven't given myself that. I haven't maybe found a person that will hold me accountable to that, which is what you do.
Yeah.
So tapping in, even if you can't do it for yourself, it's like going to the gym and saying, I'm not going to do 10 sit-ups. I need somebody that's going to push me to do 10 sit-ups.
Yeah.
And we need coaches in so many different aspects of life, not just our gym routine, not just think about it. We'll go to work and we'll model ourselves after somebody. We'll take tips from the guy who's above us, but we won't turn around and do those same things for ourselves in other aspects.
I'm saying.
And so it's all about that. So man, this has been awesome. So I want to make sure I give you the floor before we get up out of here today, just to kind of tell a little bit about you, not just a little bit about yourself, but more importantly, close us out with like any final words that you may have. Yeah,
well, I would say, all my brothers out there, my sisters as well, if you want to live a more wealthy life, it starts at home. It starts within the four walls. It starts behind closed doors. And if you want to build, you want to have more money, to break generational cycles and build generational wealth for the future, you have to have more focus on that well-being. But before you could ever get there, you have to get real with yourself, right? So at wealthyandrelaxed.com or Wealthy and Relaxed on Instagram, we have a website and we offer a free 3-day mini course. It's called the Getting Real mini course, where we ask you 3 core questions that will give you the clarity that you need and the momentum that you need to get moving on your goals. And if after that you want to sit down with us for a Get Real call, you can do that. We can dive deep, understand where it is you want to go, who it is you want to become, why haven't you got it. We can see if we're a good fit for coaching. And eventually you can then get you a custom morning routine created specific to your why, your values, where you're going, your schedule, and you can grow into where you want to go. So tap into Wealthy and Relaxed, and that's Wealthy spelled WELLTHY, or you can tap into my Instagram, Coach Jordan Rawls, or my wife's Instagram, Prosper with Candace.
Awesome. And I'm gonna make sure I put all of that in the bio. All of that information is gonna be down below. Whether it be on Spotify or whether it be on YouTube, wherever you're watching, I'm gonna make sure you have all that information, so you don't have to try to memorize that. We're gonna make sure you can tap in and then make it very simple for you. Bro, I'd like to thank you for coming out today, man. I appreciate you
so much. I'm glad that you saw that comment on Instagram. I'm glad that you have this platform. I love your story. I love what you're doing.
No, I appreciate it.
Man, I'd be glad to do this again in the future, man.
Yeah, no, you know what? And I plan on that. Like I tell people, our stories don't end at this day, on this day at this table. So our stories continue to evolve. And people sometimes love to go back and see, what is that person doing?
Yeah.
How is that person doing? What are they doing with their business? So no, we're definitely going to tap in and do this again in the future. I love to set it up to where we can continue our story, because our stories are ever evolving.
Yeah.
All my listeners' stories are ever evolving. But what we're doing here is we're hopefully setting it up to where people can truly be encouraged to transform, encouraged to pivot and make adjustments in their life.
Sure.
But more importantly, realize, man, I'm not by myself in that. I realized that I was feeling the exact same way he was feeling at one point in his life. And I am tired of feeling that way. So I hope that this can truly allow people to realize I got to make some changes.
Yeah, it's time.
It is. It definitely is. Well, awesome, bro. Well, I thank you for coming. I want to thank all my listeners for coming out today, sitting down with us, really tapping into the community here, then turning around and tapping into his community. It was a blessing for me, and I know it was a blessing for you. You got tons of tools that you can truly look at and say, I might need to look into that. I might need to try that out. And if it's something that you're just like, I need more information on, you got my brother here, the coach, to be able to guide you in the direction of which direction you're wanting to go if you're still a little confused. And so definitely reach out to him. Thank you all. I want to thank my producer. I want to thank the people in the background to make it all happen for us. And with that said, hey, look, thanks for sitting down with us. Thanks for coming into the room, sitting in the circle with us. And hopefully you can tap in again on the next episode.
All right. Let's grow, people.
Hey, we appreciate you listening today and hope that if you enjoyed the conversation and stories, you will subscribe and listen to past and future content. Feel free to comment, as we would love to read your comments and pray over all of our listeners. Also, please follow us on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, and Facebook at God's Glory and Mensstories.
We understand as men how the thought of even facing your own story and the pain and hurt that come with that is a challenging task. But we don't want you to feel like you are all alone, because you are not. God has not forgotten you or left your side, and he loves you no matter what you have done. Your healing is important to him, and we want you to have these free resources that already exist if you're considering giving up or need someone to talk to. The National Suicide Prevention Lifeline number is 1-800-273-8255. If you need support but are not in crisis, consider reaching out to a warm line if you need to talk to someone. Speaking to someone on these calls is typically free and confidential and run by people who understand what it's like to struggle with mental health. Find a local number by going to warmline.org.